Assalamu alaikum. Okay, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So I know the last part you said that, we all Muslims have ran to Biden and her. What options do we have now to vote for?
Well, I think locally you still have to engage locally because you need to still do the local. But on the national level, I do think that we need to send a clear message that you cannot take our vote, our donations, our engagement for granted, no matter who the community is. And more so that he incited against the Muslims in a way that resulted in the massive Islamophobia that just blew up all over the place. So I put the responsibility of Wadi' on him and his messaging that basically inflamed the passion rather than, again, hugging Israel is like a pastime sport in America. Right? So everybody says, I'm for Israel. You could, whatever, if you want to do that, do that. Okay, I'm standing with Israel. They're fighting, whatever. But the way that they messaged it made the passions in here against Muslims and translated into the crimes that unleashed and killed the little 6 years old guy. Kid.
Islamophobia is on the rise. So are we organizing in a way that we can identify who the candidates are?
We're working. We do have the Muslim organization, the large 14 national organizations. We just had a couple of meetings. We're still trying to strategize in terms of what our responses would be. But definitely we're sending a message that we're not for Biden 2024.
Thank you.
Brother Hatem, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Oh, you're welcome.
I appreciate that. The question that I have is it's more general. Why the academic level, the intellectual, the people that they used to come and talk about the correctness of these things, right? Why they're not there? Why they're not talking? Why they're so quiet?
Well, the university have been transformed into almost a corporate entity. So the university is heavily dependent on donors. There's less and less public funding going to education. So responds more to big donors. That's one part of this equation. The second is the university have become the site of cultural wars. And people don't want to be in the middle of these cultural wars because you speak, immediately you're going to be doxxed, you're going to find your Fox all over you, CNN. So people are hesitant to engage in this. And the third, there is a systematic campaign by pro-Israel organization, by legal warfare, by Stand With Us, to target every faculty member with all kinds of harassment. Calling for freedom of information, to collect all their emails, respondents, so people begin to be very careful in doing so. And that's narrowing the arena for the ability of scholars to come out and speak. And I might add also the phenomena of the social media makes influencers far more important than intellectuals, right? And that's the calamity, because influencers, what is that category? What research is there other than having a cat that jumps faster and you have a video for 1.5 minutes and garners 1 million views, and they throw a statement about Palestine. So that's a calamity that we are in.
Any questions from the sisters?
Jazakallah, Dr. Hatem. If you could leave us with 3 action items, 3 things we can do to support our brothers and sisters in Gaza, we would really appreciate that.
One, I would ask people to every day call the White House. Just as you get up to get your coffee, tea, or cereal, call the White House. And you could, I think the number is, let me see, I have it on my phone, I dial it in the morning. Just give them, a minute of your time. our opposition does it, and they get the response. So 202-456-1414. So if you could commit in the morning, just call the White House.
There is another number I would
Yeah.
like to share. It's 202-224-3121.
Is that the comments line?
That's it's 202-224-3121.
What is it again? Let me see. So
Where you can get access to
202
202-224-3121.
224-3121. It does not look familiar to me, but I will check on that to make sure. So that's one to do. Second, I want you to actually call your mayor and your council member, because they have immediate influence and link to the Democratic Central Committee or the Republican Central Committee. That's very, very, very important, because all politics is local. Their statement about supporting Israel's right to defend itself is contingent on your local engagement here with them in a systematic way. The third, I do think that they proactively begin to think about how to educate yourself about the specifics by maybe having a reading group or reading a book and discussing the specifics of Palestine, because it's information heavy. Cause it cannot be done with what you call watching the videos on Twitter, Instagram, and so on. So those three items will be very important. U.S. Senate, that's why I said it does not look familiar.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So I know for a lot of folks, what we're seeing over the last couple of weeks, it's similar stuff that we've seen before as well, and
Yeah.
repeatedly and such as well, and that can be very demoralizing as well. Do you mind sharing maybe some things that give you hope when it comes to seeing a future? Yeah.
Well, I always trust in Allah. That's right. If you trust in the world is always going to be changed. Allah is Al-Adl. I believe that Allah is the all-just. Right? Even if you're alone, you're not alone, because Allah is with you wherever you are. We take with the asbab, but our trust is Allah is the dispossessor of all the affairs. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim and Al-Adl. So you always have to put in your mind that we are in the realm of the divine. And no matter what happened, we believe that we are in a better place no matter what the circumstances, whether alive, or we hope that if we die, we are at least in the divine presence. So for me, that's for us to, as a grounding in there. The second, you should have a habit of turning off the news feed that you have, right? And I do think that people begin to be addicted because they think that the more news you consume of what's taking place, that the more you are aware. I don't think so. Especially with the social media, just people begin to be over what you call saturated, and you're not actually getting more sound information. And as you notice, they just continue to repeat, so you begin to be part of a loop. So get the news, 10, 15 minutes time, and then separate yourself, go and read, drink tea, right? Just do something that you are not affecting the world by watching more news. It becomes a way, what you call almost a form of entertainment on the news, even though it is sad news and so on. So I recommend for people not to spend the hours, right, in doing so. And the third, just do a routine of moving, right, walking and so on, so you not get sad or absorbed in the circumstances that are taken, which are, overwhelming. But this is the world we are in. The world is a world of tribulation, and we are just experiencing the period of tribulations in not only in Palestine but the Muslim world. The Duke University Institute said since 9/11, about 4.7 million Muslims have been killed in the wars of terrorism. Whether talking about Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Sudan, Yemen, Somalia, right? You're talking about 4.7 in a 22-year period. So, yeah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to transform our condition and bring ease to the ummah, inshallah.
I forgot.
That's okay.
Let me ask you a question. That's my son, Ihsan. Assalamu alaikum.
How old are you, Hassan?
8 years old.
Okay, mashallah.
He's a very strong supporter of Palestine.
Alhamdulillah.
You know, when this issue first started, in my chat group, there was a little bit of a discussion. And the discussion was around a California state senator who, and I don't recall specifically what they said, but they didn't oppose, I think they kind of stood with Israel. Well, not necessarily. I think they may have said something around like they condemn any killing of all people. And this was like the very start of this issue. So the debate was around whether or not we should continue to support her or not. Part of the debate was, look, we can't put pressure on our fellow Muslims who go into politics and they're just starting out. Let's get much stronger and get a little bit more involved. Versus, you know what, we need to put pressure on them as well to be our voice, which in turn may cause them to lose their position later on. So it was that type of debate, and I wonder where you would kind of stand.
We have the same discussions with the faculty, right, in terms of the university. My feeling is that if you are not courageous starting, you're not going to be courageous later on. Because you become more comfortable where you are and you take people for granted. We don't want people just to represent identity. We want courageous people because this is the moment or the period for courage, not only on Palestine, on a number of issues. Right? You need to be courageous in confronting the pharmaceutical companies that pushed opioid on people and resulted in the massive opioid crisis. Walgreens is indicted for pushing opioid. San Francisco, they have to pay $500 million fine for pushing opioid. Walmart, Duke Pharmaceuticals, the Sackler family, $26 billion. They pushed opioid from 1999 till now. Almost 1 million Americans died. And they continue. If you go to San Francisco, people are just dying every day on the street. Needs courage for you to actually stand, to say, I'm not going to take any money from the pharmaceutical companies. And I want you to come and testify about how you allowed a doctor in a small town with 5,000 people to prescribe 80,000 pills a month. How is that possible? All right? So what we want is courageous people. Winning and losing is part of the reality of politics. If you are running and you're only worried about losing, you should not run. Because there is a set of principles that you have to actually stand by, and people respect people who stand on principle. As long as you explain where you are and what you're doing, and here's my principles. Unfortunately, we have, again, Muslims, we're happy for identity, just somebody is Muslim, but we don't take them to task for the courageous positions that they have to take. So for me, I fall on that I would rather for you to be principled rather than to be what you call not courageous. Your opposition is basically in your face. And they take no prisoner. So the more that they know, in general for me, the more they know that you bite, the more they stay away from you. The more that they know that you are vacillating, they know that you are an easy lunch. For me, that's what I feel.
I have a follow-up question. Is that okay?
You okay?
Last question for me. Right now, the I mean, you're starting to see, and I don't know if everybody sees this, but there's a fair amount of shift where a greater amount of the American population is learning more and more about Palestine and really what's going on there.
Yeah.
Is there a coordinated effort to kind of try to educate the American population more? Because the way I think is that their lack of knowledge is really driving a lot of the support for Israel.
I think the American public are instinctively aware. Like 66% of them are saying, calling for a ceasefire. In terms of the various data, it's only the older people that are still firmly behind Israel. The younger population are actually the opposite. 56% are standing with Palestinians. And they no longer trust the mainstream media. So the more the mainstream media is actually speaking and taunting and bullying Palestinians, the more people are not following nor are taking their story. And most of the social media content that is coming from Palestine sources are being taken and acted upon. As far as an organized effort, we've been just active throughout the country, right? All these protests, demonstrations, we're mobilizing people across. This past Saturday, Friday I was in New Jersey, Saturday in Washington, then flew down to LA. So people are mobilized in numbers that are unprecedented in terms of the last time we have such people out in numbers were the anti-Iraq war 2003. And it's on a global level. Like if you saw yesterday, the Saturday in London, almost 100, they say about 150 possibly in London. France, the French government prohibited demonstrations. So people went out to the court. The court actually issued a rebuke of the president. Even with the president prohibiting protests, thousands filled the Plaza de la Republique. You could not step a foot, which is a huge, huge turnout. So that shows you that there is a different dynamics taking place. And part of it, I read it, I think Israel overreached in its violence. Honestly, if Israel, not that they're following my recommendation, this is free recommendation, if they just waited for 2 weeks and milked the sympathies of people, I think Palestinians would be in a very, very difficult position. If they just waited 2 weeks, 3 weeks, came to Disneyland, did some Hollywood cuts and so on, I would say that there would not be possible to have a Palestine protest anywhere in this country or in Europe. But because they acted with immediate revenge and overwhelming power, it activated in people the sentiment that this is something wrong taking place. And I have never seen a shift in public opinion as fast and rapidly taking place as this case. In less than 48 hours, from people having Israeli flags on the Eiffel Tower, on Big Ben, on the sports and so on, in 48 hours after the bombing, massive numbers out in the streets, people protesting and so on, and people beginning to step back. Right? This past weekend, the Premier League were discussing whether to actually have the Israeli colors being at the Wembley Stadium. They actually worried that the people's reaction would be so negative, they decided not to do it. Right? That shows you that the shift that occurred in such a rapid fashion is a result of Israel's failure to actually read the moment and to realize that this overwhelming power might appeal to the thugs, literally thugs, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and the rest of them in the Israeli cabinet, but the world public opinion is a completely different place. And I think they misread the signals from people, and that's what we're seeing the outcome of it.
More questions, inshallah.
Before suhoor, so we'll take one more question and then I have to teach tomorrow, early morning.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So I just to get your idea right now about the public change in the ideas and the small generation or the young generation already changed the behaviors or the mentality related to Palestinian and Israeli concern. So my question here is, how this affects the community here for the short and long term, for your opinion? So if we stayed like this for 3-5 years, is this anything gonna change in terms of the politics here?
Yeah.
How about 15-20 years from now? Or it's about the event that's happened this year?
If I could answer your question about 20 to 30 years from now, they might give me $100 million on the spot.
No, but you are more academic than us, so we
Yeah,
need
but no
to
academic
learn.
can tell you what's going to happen in 30 years, especially in the social science arena. I could tell you what accumulatively happened in the past and maybe some positive avenues to look at in order for us to understand. The change in public opinion is cumulative. Right? So it's a 30-year period that this change takes place as a result of many different elements. Both Palestine activist work, but also missteps of Israel and the United States.
But your opinion is it's between Israeli and Palestinian concern, or in terms of humanity issues here? Like, now the American people look to this war between Muslims and Jews, or between people they kill, weak people, like Israeli have a power and America stand with them and Europe stand with them, and we have Palestinian people, they don't have anybody with them. Are they just have this emotional for this just now, or in the future we will have my kids will have a friendly environment to say, hey, we are Muslim and we stand with rights and we are supporting Muslim country, which is called Palestine, and they have rights for this.
Yeah.
I have 2 sons here,
I know, but
and I'm talking.
I know, but I
like
can't
that,
answer
okay.
to you about what's going to happen when they grow up and so on. It's how much work you do to effect change in order for you to create the environment and the country that you are in. I do believe that the American public overall is anti-war. They have to be stoked into war. And usually they get stoked and they join the fever for war, but as soon as it gets disastrous, they completely go back to an anti-war position. Right? We saw that in Iraq, and then it dragged on for 20 years. We saw that in Afghanistan, same thing. So entering war is very easy. Extracting yourself out of a war is very difficult. The United States have a long history of that, but the public has to be stoked, and that's why the role of the media to incite and stoke people to support an illegitimate war. In the United States, every illegitimate war, again, ended up being disaster, whether it's Vietnam all the way to Latin America's intervention and so on. So I think what we need is to do the work that is needed to continue to build on a public opinion that is shifting and to try to influence it for good policy, which I think is possible. The other element, there is a large segment of Jewish Americans that are leaving and abandoning Israel in their political work, like Jewish Voice for Peace, the 500 that went to Congress and got arrested just last 3 days ago. Okay? That's a shift that has been in the making for quite a long time. And Jewish Voice for Peace initially started as a liberal, pro-peace organization. Now it's an anti-Zionist organization. That shift took place over a period. So beginning 2018, 2019, they took a decision as a group to be anti-Zionist. So these are things that are accumulative, and continue to invest in it will make change over time. Okay? Final question.
I apologize. So obviously we've seen the momentum every time something crazy happens, pick up and then it dies down. A suggestion and maybe also a question as well. are there any coordinated efforts? I'm sure there are multiple platforms out there in which it's not just us Muslims who obviously have a very strong sentiment to this out there protesting. Is there any platform in where there are other, like these, guys who are going anti-Zionist Jews that we can align with?
We are. So again, I'm the chairman of American Muslims for Palestine, so we coordinate closely with the GVP, Jewish Voice for Peace, and other organizations. We coordinate with the Sabir, which is the voice of Christians that work on Palestine. We have a group that works on Christian Zionism and how to dissect it and look at what's developing. So there is different groups that are coordinating and working together in a variety of ways to push, and that result of it is these mass mobilizations. Yeah, some will take the lead on one thing, some will take the lead on another thing. So today and tomorrow in DC we have Advocacy Day for Palestine through Americans for Justice in Palestine action. So we have people visiting their senator, congressman offices, giving them, what are the points that they want to advocate for. So this is taking place as we speak. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah.
I went to Berkeley, Accredited in 04.